That night, the desert seemed to have swallowed every last sound. There were no crickets, no wind, no life. Just a thick, heavy silence. Thatton filled Travaine the chest, as if the air had gone rotten. I've walked through many abandoned places, but none of them made me feel what I felt when I entered that forgotten cemetery. The wooden fences were rotten, sagging at odd angles, like broken bones pointing skyward. The tombstones, cracked by time and dust, gleamed like stone teeth under the pale moon. It was a place where even the dead seemed to have given up on resting. The earth was too dry to support flowers. What grew there were only gnarled weeds, crawling between the holes like snakes. The smell was a mix of rust and burnt earth, but there was something else, something reminiscent of old toys stored away for too long. That scent of damp wood and cloth forgotten in trunks. I shouldn't have recognized it, but I did. It was in that silence that I heard, not a cry, not a scream, but a short, light, almost innocent laugh. A child's laugh. My fingers tightened on the revolver's grip without me realizing it. Deep down, I knew no lump of lead could protect me from what was there, because there was nothing normal about laughter echoing in a cemetery, where even the living refuse to enter. They say a child's laughter is the purest sound there is, but when it is born among the tombstones, it is not purity. It is a warning, a reminder that some souls do not rest, and that some stories should not be remembered. The cold of the night didn't come from the wind. It came from the certainty that something was watching me, and I, Elias Blackthorn, was no longer just a sheriff on guard. I was an intruder walking through someone's backyard, and that someone had the form of a child. I should have left when I heard that laugh, but I didn't. And what I saw next haunts me to this day. If you dare stay with me until the end, because this isn't just a child's story. It's the story of a warning from the other side of the earth. Don't turn away now. Every minute you listen could be the last warning you'll have before stepping into a cursed cemetery. And believe me, you'll want to know what that child was doing among the tombstones before the moon disappeared. The moment that laughter faded into the wind, I knew the night wouldn't let me go anytime soon. I stood still, just listening to the silence grow heavy again, as if the cemetery had held its breath along with me. Then, suddenly, I saw a swift movement among the tombstones. Small, agile, as if someone playing hide, dash, and dash seek. My eyes took a while to believe what I saw. A child, no taller than my waist. She ran between the graves with light steps, as if dancing on dry ground. Her dark hair fell over her face, and her clothes, if you could call them clothes, looked like faded scraps. Pieces of cloth that belonged nowhere at first. I tried to convince myself that maybe I was a lost orphan. There were so many abandoned children in the West. Children growing up without families, wandering the cities like ownerless souls. Maybe that was it, I thought. Maybe hunger and cold had driven him to take shelter among the dead. But I soon realized something wasn't right. My heart pounded in my chest, but my boots remained firmly on the ground. The child stopped behind a cracked wooden cross and stood there, peering at me. He didn't move, didn't speak, just smiled. I tried to speak. I asked his name, asked if he needed help, if he was lost. The answer was a short, light laugh that echoed as if it had come from underground. And then something happened that chilled me to the bone. The child ran, not toward me, but behind an old tombstone. When I went back, the tomb was empty. Nothing there. No marks on the ground. No footprints in the dry dust. There was only one toy, a broken wooden horse, left on the tombstone as if it were a gift. I knew that cemetery hadn't been visited in years, and yet that toy looked newly placed. I held the little horse in my hand and realized how cold it was. Not cold like the night, got cold as stone, cold as bones. At that moment, I understood two things. First, that child was not of this world. Second, she wanted to play with me. I should have left that toy there. I should have turned away and forgotten all about it. But I didn't. And that's when the whispers began in the town. And every man swore he'd heard the child call the dead by name. The next day, the city looked the same as always. Dust, half empty. Saloons, threadbare coats passing along the main street. But if you paid attention, you'd notice that people were different. Suspicious glances, interrupted whispers as I passed. It was as if everyone knew something and expected me to know it too. It was at Joe's bar counter that I first heard the name that was on everyone's lips. The child of the Tombstones, one of the miners, drunk, swore he'd seen a small figure running through the cemetery 3 nights in a row. Another said that while burying a colleague, he heard giggles echoing among the graves, even when no one else was around. No one spoke very loudly. Stories were told between quick sips of whiskey, as if they were afraid the thing would hear. The evidence, none. But the signs, they were everywhere. Toys appeared on ancient graves, toys that no one in town claimed to have placed there. A jump rope made of leather strips was found on the headstone of a man hanged 20 years earlier. A torn teddy bear appeared on the grave of a woman who died in childbirth. And there were the drawings, childish, marks scratched in the earth around the graves, as if someone had played Ring around the clock. The scariest thing, however, were the purport of voices. Some said that as night fell, the child would call out the names of the dead. A small, sweet voice, repeating the names of people who had not lived there for decades. A gravedigger swore he saw the earth move when she spoke, as if her call echoed far below. It wasn't long before the whispers turned to real fear. Little by little, no one wanted to go near the cemetery anymore. Families living on the outskirts of town moved. The church bell was rung twice more every night, as if that would scare the thing away. And some swore the child was no longer confined to just tombstones. A farmer reported seeing the figure standing at the edge of his yard, watching his children play. When he ran after it, he only found small footprints in the dust. The whole town might have laughed nervously, but deep down we all felt the same thing. Red Hollow had been chosen by something dark. Then the pastor knocked on my office door. His look wasn't one of faith. It was one of dread. And the words he said to me that night remain etched in my mind to this day. "Sheriff, that's not a child. It's a calling." I was dusting off my badge when a knock came on the door, as if asking for shelter from a storm. There were no clouds in the sky, but the look on the man's face showed one. Pastor Whitaker hurriedly closed the door, as if something might slip through the hinges. His Bible was clutched to his chest, his fingers stained with wax, as if he'd spent the entire night melting candles to keep the darkness at bay. "Sheriff," he said breathlessly, "I need you to come with me to the cemetery." I didn't move. His silence told me the rest. This wasn't a matter for the church pews. It was for the hard earth where names turned to stone. I sat him in the chair before my desk. The lamp flickered, even in the absence of wind. Whitaker took a deep breath, pulled a worn notebook from his pocket, the burial register, and opened it to a stained page. Here, his finger traced a scratched line. A child, unnamed, buried untimely on a waning moon night, many years ago. "No name?" I asked. "No baptism," he corrected, his eyes darting from mine. "The mother arrived late. The baby was born without a voice. There was no time for a blessing, no bells, no farewell. The gravedigger paid to forget the note, and I sinned by allowing it." The pastor slammed the book shut, as if he could trap the guilt between its covers. "Some things we bury continue to breathe beneath." I told him about the little wooden horse, the laughter that seemed to come from underground, the shadow that stretched too far. He listened without surprise, if revisiting a familiar fear. "That's not a child, Elias," he whispered, using my name as a requiem. "It's a call. It calls the dead by their name because no one called hers." His words hung between us like dust in a lamp beam. The pastor pulled a small cloth bag from his coat, coarse salt, a knotted piece of string, a blackened crucifix. "I don't carry weapons," he said, "but this helps draw a line the world over there is reluctant to cross." He pushed the bag toward me. "You carry the lead. I'll carry what's left of my faith." "And what exactly do you want me to do?" "Arrest, laughter, find ghosts. Just go to her," he urged, his voice breaking. "Tell her what none of us have said. Give her a place. If she won't accept it, then let God and iron decide." Whitaker stood, straightening his worn collar. "At midnight," he said, "when the bells don't toll and the world forgets who's left." He put his hand on the latch, hesitated, then turned to me. His eyes held the same water as empty baptistries. "If she speaks to you, don't answer to the name she gives. To answer is to accept the invitation." After he left, I scratched a cross into the back of 2 Bullitzer. Roadside superstition I learned from men who no longer breathe. I stuffed the lantern into my bag, a shovel, salt, string, and a piece of red cloth from my handkerchief. Not out of courage, out of habit. Those who have lived long enough understand that the night likes to collect confident men. I stopped at the edge of the cemetery gate. The wood creaked like an old throat. The moon seemed smaller, as if afraid to look down before entering. I tied the string with knots around my wrist, threw a line of salt on the ground, and whispered so no one could hear. I didn't come to arrest anyone. I came to learn a name they forgot to say. The lamp burned brighter, then lowered, as if it had understood the lie. I also knew that wasn't quite it. I hadn't come to learn. I'd come to remember of what I didn't yet know. I took the first step between the tombstones and the desert. Polite held its breath again. The rest, I confess, is not something a man can tell without his voice breaking. Because when the giggle returned, it didn't come alone. It was accompanied by a shallow, tiny sound like coffin lids touched by small fingers, begging for another round of play. The child was somewhere ahead, and I, with my star that weighs heavily at midnight sharp, I saw her clearly hopping from tombstone to tombstone like stepping stones in a stream. The lamp trembled on. The graves trembled with it. That was when I understood that night would have no witnesses, only participants. The moon was already at its highest point when I crossed the cemetery gate. The wood creaked as if trying to warn me to turn back, but the warning came too late. I had already chosen to move on, even though I knew no one returns whole from the place where the dead dwell. And then I saw her, the child. She hopped from one tombstone to another, feet light as if floating, arms outstretched as if balancing. She laughed softly, a short laugh that seemed to multiply through the air, echoing in various directions. It was impossible to tell if it came from her or from the earth below. I approached slowly, my fingers firmly on the handle of the revolver, not out of courage, but out of reflex. "Hey," I said quietly, "who are you? What are you doing here alone?" The child stopped, staring at me. The eyes reflected no light. They were like two holes lit with almost extinguished embers. And when he smiled, there were no teeth, just a dark void that shouldn't be there. The ground shook beneath my feet. Ancient tombstones vibrated like stone bells, and then I heard it, by a low, muffled chorus coming from underground, as if dozens of hands were pushing against coffin lids, trying to reach the surface. The child tilted his head, pointed to a newly dug grave, and spoke for the first time. "They want to play, Sheriff." The voice was childish, but slurred, as if he had learned to speak with too many mouths. I felt cold sweat trickle down the back of my neck. I took another step, and the lamp went out on its own. The darkness fell heavily. The only light came from the moon and from the thing's eyes. I tried to light the match. My hands were shaking. When the flame finally caught, I noticed the nearby headstones moving. The earth heaved, slowly, as if breathing. The entire cemetery seemed alive. "Who are you?" I insisted, my voice breaking. The child laughed, took another leap between the graves, and stopped a few steps away from me. The smell that came with it wasn't earth or dust. It was of old toys, moldy cloth, forgotten wood, mixed with rusty iron. It was the smell of buried childhood. He bent down, picked something up off the floor, and showed it to me. A crooked iron top spinning by itself in the palm of his hand. "Play with me," he said, his tone too sweet for the weight he carried. It was at that moment that I understood that this was not an apparition that limited itself to scaring. It was a presence that wanted to drag me into the game. And in Red Hollow, anyone who agreed to play never came home. I should have run. I should have dropped that lamp and never come back. But I stayed. And what that child showed me next was no joke. It was my tombstone. "Play with me," she repeated. My hand itched on the handle of my revolver. But what good is lead against something not born on this side of the earth? I took a deep breath, trying to stay sane, but the ground shook again. Now it wasn't just vibrations. The earth around the graves was rising, cracking, as if the dead wanted to watch. It was then that the child put down the spinning top and pointed to a distant tombstone at the edge of the cemetery, where the moon shone brightly. He walked toward it with light, almost skipping steps, and each step seemed to pull me along, like an invisible rope tied to my chest. "Come on, Sheriff," she said, her voice too sweet for the darkness surrounding her. "I want to show you where you sleep." The words froze my blood, and then I saw a cracked, dust-covered tombstone with worn letters. I knelt down without realizing it. I ran my hand over the cold stone and brushed away the dirt. The inscription was there, clear despite the age. Elias Blackthorn, 1871. Until there was no date of death, my own name, recorded as if it had been placed there from the beginning. My legs trembled, but I didn't give in. I looked at the child, who was now standing on the ground, swinging her body like someone playing ring round. Her smile widened beyond its normal size, stretching across her cheeks, revealing a black void where her mouth should have been. "You're already with us, Sheriff," he murmured, his voice seeming to come from everywhere, echoing among the graves. "You just don't remember. Your grave is already made. All that's left is for you to lie down." Behind me, I heard dull noises, like fists hitting wood, like coffins being pushed. The headstones shook. The air grew heavy, dense, difficult to breathe. My hand finally reached for the revolver, not to shoot the child, but to remind myself whether I was still alive or not. I pointed the gun, and she just laughed. That broken toy laugh. "Bullets don't kill memories," she said. And then he pointed his finger at me, like an accusation. The ground in front of my headstone cracked. The earth opened, revealing a black hole, too deep, from which rose a smell of iron and rotting flowers. And within it, something stirred. Something that carried the sound of my own breathing. I didn't have the courage to look for more than a second, but I swear, before any man or ghost, that I saw my own face in the darkness of that cave, pale, motionless, just waiting for me to agree to play. That's when I realized that child wasn't alone. She was just the messenger. The real voice hadn't spoken yet, and when it did, it wasn't from the cemetery. It was from inside me. The voice didn't come from the graveyard. It came from a worse place, from the part of me that still believes. Some things can be fixed. Lie down, Elijah, he whispered, and it sounded like my own mouth speaking inside my head. The star is tired. The earth is soft. I took a step back, sucking in a breath like someone drinking murky water. The pastor had warned me. Don't respond to the name, she says. But what about when the name is yours? And when the invitation comes with your voice? The child watched me with the patience of someone who already knew the outcome. He spun the top again. The graves breathed, and the headstone bearing my name seemed to move a hand's breadth closer, as if the entire cemetery had taken a step. You weren't born to rule the living, the thing said, rocking its body like a ring-a-roar. You were born to watch over the departed. I remembered the pastor's burial book. A child without a name, buried without a bell, without a blessing, without a farewell. I finally understood. It wasn't just a ghost. It was an interrupted ritual. A game without a final round. A childhood that never learned to sleep. And the cemetery. The cemetery just gave her a backyard. I clutched the bag of salt, the knotted string, the darkened crucifix. I drew a line on the ground, another on my chest. My mouth spoke without me thinking. I didn't come to arrest anyone. The flame of the lamp crackled. I came to remember a name. The child stopped. The shadow shortened, as if the world had held its breath. Name, he whispered, and for a moment it sounded fragile. Not what they gave you, I continued, but what they withheld from you. I didn't dare baptize her. I didn't dare steal what wasn't mine. I knelt and left the red handkerchief, only part of me that still carried warmth on the ground. Pi tied the string to the cloth, made a small bow, and pushed it to the edge of the grave. So you can play in peace, away from my name. The top stopped. The tapping of the wood ceased, one by one, like tired fingers giving up on calling. The wind finally found its courage and crossed the field of crosses. The flame remained steady. The child tilted her head, confused, as if she had found an open door where there had always been a wall. Then he smiled, and for the first time, it was a child's smile, quick, short, almost a goodbye. He turned and ran between the tombstones, light, light, until he was nothing but dust and moon. I stood alone before my name engraved in stone. The date remained the same, 1871, bet without the date of death. The question mark weighed more heavily than any number. It wasn't a sentence. It was a suspended sentence. And that's worse than death. I put the gun away. I adjusted the star on my chest. And I did what men do when the truth is too big for their hands. I walked slowly to the gate and closed it in place. The wood creaked like an old throat saying, "Go, me. I keep patrolling what has become endless." The desert sleeps with one eye open, red hollow to dot. And when the church bell rings with no one in the steeple, when the bronze trembles alone and the night answers with 3 equal sues, will hear me again, because that's another story, and it has already started. Don't even think about leaving now. The next report is already in front of you. Click before I'm forced to follow you into the darkness. And believe me, you don't want a dead sheriff knocking on your door.